The sea doesn't care for your sins. It doesn't care for your secrets. It only cares for what you'll sacrifice to survive. On the docks of Portsmouth, a desperate sailor made a choice, one born of simple mercy, paid for in blood and iron. And that choice would not only save a life, it would ignite a war. The hurricane hit like God's own fist. Wind howls through the rigging of HMS Resolute, snapping ropes like thread and hurling sheets of icy rain across the quarterdeck. Lanterns swing in frantic arcs, their flames kissing the tarred rigging before guttering out. A single figure, Nathaniel Nat Quinn, lashes himself to the mizzenmast with trembling fingers, salt spray stinging the half-healed welts across his back. His one good eye, the color of storm-tossed slate, fixes on the black horizon where lightning forks like silver daggers. He screams into the gale, voice shredded by wind. "I saved the man who would save me." Cut to black. White text slams onto the screen. 365 days earlier. Fade up on a different storm. A quieter, colder one. Portsmouth Harbor. Midnight, 1797. Mist coils above the water like ghost-ridden silk. Nat, barefoot and coatless, shoulders a crate marked gunpowder up a slick gangplank. His breath fogs in front of him. The moon is a thin blade overhead. Somewhere behind him, a fiddle keens a drunken reel from a dockside tavern, the notes warped by distance and ale. Nat pauses, wipes blood. Not his, from his split knuckles onto the rough canvas of his trousers. He hasn't slept in 36 hours. The hammock rolled tight beneath his arm is the only thing in the world that belongs solely to him. The canvas still smells faintly of his mother's lavender water from the day he was pressed into service 3 years ago. A sailor without a hammock sleeps on ballast stones and wakes with bruises shaped like his own ribs. A scream slices the night. Not wind. Human. Female? No, too deep. Male. Young. Nat pivots. Down on the quay, 3 hulking dock thugs surround a scrawny figure pressed against a stack of barrels. The victim's face is lost in shadow, but the voice, ragged, defiant, cuts straight through Nat's exhaustion. "I stole nothing but the crust you threw to gulls." One thug raises a cudgel. Moonlight glints off the iron tip. Nat's grip tightens on the hammock. Every instinct honed by naval discipline screams at him to keep moving. Miss Muster and the cat-o'-nine-tails will flay the skin from his spine. But the boy's eyes, when the thug yanks his head back, glow like coals in a dying fire, and for a heartbeat Nat sees his own brother's face the day they hanged him for piracy. Nat steps forward. "Leave him be," he calls, voice steady despite the tremor in his gut. "He's under my watch tonight." The largest thug laughs, a wet sound like a cracked bell. "Your watch, sailboy? You'll share the beating, then." Nat doesn't answer with words. He slides the marlinspike from his belt, a foot of tempered iron, sharpened to a sailor's point. The thugs hesitate. Dock rats can smell desperation, and right now Nat reeks of it. The boy, barely more than skin stretched over hunger, meets Nat's eyes. Something passes between them, recognition, maybe, or debt. The thugs back off, melting into the fog like bad dreams. Nat exhales, realizes he's been holding his breath. The boy sags against the barrels, clutching his ribs. Nat crouches, offers the rolled hammock. "Sleep. Tomorrow you work for your keep." The boy's fingers, long, aristocratic despite the grime, brush the canvas. "I'll owe you my life, sailor." Nat almost laughs. Life is cheap on the docks. But the boy's voice carries an odd weight, as though he's pronouncing a vow older than the harbor itself. Cut to dawn. Trumpets blare across the Resolute's deck. Master-at-Arms Hawkins stalks the ranks, nostrils flaring. Nat stands at attention, hollow-eyed, hammock conspicuously absent from his sea bag. Hawkins stops in front of him. "Missing Kit, Quinn?" Nat's throat is sand. "Lost overboard, sir." The first lash falls at sunrise. Blood spatters the deck like crimson rain. Nat bites through the inside of his cheek to keep from screaming, tastes iron and lavender. With each stroke, the boy's face, clean now, refined, hovers behind his eyelids. A promise, a curse. Voiceover whispers, intimate as a lover. Would you trade 24 lashes for a stranger's life? Comment justice if you'd take the whip. Comment fool if you'd walk away. The choice you make will decide whether Nat lives to see another tide. Close up on the blood-stained hammock, now clutched by the boy, Lucian Ashworth, watching from the shadows of the harbor. His knuckles whiten around the canvas. A seal glints in the lining, half hidden by blood and salt. Fade to black. A single church bell tolls. Once, twice, again. Text splashes across the void. The clock is ticking. End cold open. Portsmouth stank of tar, piss, and opportunity. Nat's boots slapped through puddle and offal as he hauled the last cask of powder aboard Resolute. Midnight fog rolled off the harbor, thick as wool, tasting of coal smoke and dead fish. Somewhere behind him a gull shrieked, then another, voices almost human, almost warning. He shifted the weight of the hammock under his arm. Canvas still warm from the boy's body. Lavender ghosted up from the weave. Mother's last gift before the press gangs took him. And for one treacherous second he imagined her arms around him instead of the rope-scarred mast looming ahead. He shook the thought off like water. "Quinn, move your arse." Hawkins's voice cracked across the wharf. Nat's shoulders jerked reflexively. The welts from last week's flogging throbbed in memory. He lengthened his stride. If he missed muster now, the cat would taste more than memory. A shadow detached from the stacked crates. The boy, Lucian, stepped into the lantern glow. Blood no longer streaked his cheek. Someone had scrubbed him clean, revealing cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. Too sharp. Hunger sharp. "You kept it," Lucian whispered, eyes on the hammock. Nat's grip tightened. "It's mine to give." A second shadow flanked the boy, no, not a shadow, a man. Taller than Nat, broader, coat flapping like a ship in distress. Silver buttons, cutlass hilt, the stink of authority. "Doc Constable." "Step aside, sailor," the constable growled. "That one's wanted for theft." Lucian's face drained to parchment. Nat's heart rabbit-kicked against his ribs. Theft could mean the hulks or the noose. "Thief's already gone," Nat said, stepping between them. "This lad's my new powder monkey." Signed and sealed. The constable's eyes narrowed. "Show me the papers." Nat had no papers. He had a hammock, a thudding pulse, and 3 seconds before the lie collapsed. He felt the weight of the marlinspike at his belt. A foot of iron, last resort. Lucian's hand brushed Nat's sleeve. Featherlight. "Don't," he breathed. "They'll hang you, too." Behind them, the harbor bell tolled once. Slow, ominous. 1 hour to tide. 1 hour before Resolute cast off. Nat's mind raced. Run and the boy would be caught. Fight and he'd swing beside him. Do nothing, and the memory of his brother's dangling feet would haunt him forever. He looked down at the hammock. Lavender, blood, salt. He looked up at the constable. "You want him, you'll take me first." The constable's hand dropped to his cudgel. Brave words for a pressed man. Somewhere overhead, thunder rumbled. Not weather cannon. The Spanish fleet, rumored for weeks, had finally shown its sails on the horizon. Alarm bells erupted across the docks. Soldiers sprinted past, muskets clattering. Chaos swallowed the wharf. Nat seized Lucian's wrist, dragged him between barrels and crates, past barrels of tar and barrels of rum and barrels of men too drunk to notice 2 ghosts racing for the ship's ladder. They skidded onto Resolute's gangway just as the bosun piped, "Up anchor!" The constable's shout vanished beneath the roar of orders and the creak of halyards. Nat shoved Lucian toward the FOCSLE. "Hide in the sail locker. Don't speak. Don't breathe." Lucian clutched the hammock like a lifeline. "What about you?" Nat managed a crooked grin. "I've got a date with the cat." Dawn bled scarlet across the deck. Nat stood at attention, shirt stripped to the waist, spine already striped from last week's punishment. The bosun unfurled the whip, 9 tails, each knotted with wire. Hawkins read the charge. Loss of kit, harboring stowaways, lying to an officer of the Crown. Nat's eyes found Lucian crouched behind the mainmast, face pale, knuckles white around the hammock's canvas. Lavender drifted on the salt breeze. The first lash fell. Skin split. Nat tasted iron. Second lash. He clenched his teeth so hard he felt one crack. Third lash. Wait! A voice. Cracked like a mainsail in gale. Lucien stepped forward. No longer a ragged boy but something else. Chin high, eyes blazing. The kit is mine. The lie is mine. The sailor only showed mercy. Silence rolled across the deck like fog. Hawkins's arm froze mid-swing. Every eye turned to the stranger who spoke like a gentleman and bled like a common thief. From his coat pocket Lucien drew a folded parchment. Wax seal glinting in the sunrise, royal seal. He snapped it open. By order of His Majesty, he read, voice carrying the length of the ship. The bearer, Lucien Ashworth, is pardoned of all debts and crimes, and those who aid him are granted immunity. Nat's knees buckled, not from pain, but from the weight of impossibility. Hawkins lowered the whip. And who, pray, are you to carry the king's seal? Lucien met Nat's eyes. I'm the stowaway who'll clear your name, sailor. But first, he smiled, crooked and fierce. First we survived the Spanish guns. Alarm bells shrieked. Cannon smoke billowed on the horizon. The deck lurched as Resolute heeled toward battle. Voiceover whispers, urgent. The hammock saved a life. Now the boy must save the fleet. Comment stand if you'd fight. Comment run if you jump ship. Either way, the next broadside is 60 seconds away. Cut to black. The sky cracked open with cannon light. A Spanish 32-pounder punched through Resolute's starboard rail and sent splinters the size of boarding pikes scything across the deck. Nat Dove left, shoulder skidding in blood-slick tar, ears ringing like church bells in hell. Smoke boiled overhead, black, acrid, alive. Lucien's voice cut through the roar. Starboard battery, fire. The ship answered with a shuddering broadside that lit the ocean red. For one heartbeat Nat saw the enemy hull split like rotten fruit. The next heartbeat, a musket ball whined past his ear and buried itself in the mast where his head had been. Time folded. 3 months collapsed into 3 seconds. Nat remembered the hammock, now tucked inside Lucien's coat like a talisman. Lavender still clung to the canvas. Mother's ghost stitched in every thread. He remembered the constable's cudgel, the lashes still raw across his back. And he remembered Lucien's impossible parchment. A royal seal that had halted the whip mid-air and turned the ship's company from executioners to witnesses. Now the parchment was ash. A stray spark from the last broadside had kissed the wax, and the seal had run like tears. Without the seal, the pardon was just paper. Without the pardon, Nat was still a condemned man. Below! Lucien's shout cracked like a whip. A second Spanish ship, smaller, faster, had peeled off the line and was racing to cross Resolute's bow. Grappling hooks glinted in the smoke. Pirates, not navy. Bounty hunters. The price on Lucien's head had doubled since sunrise. Nat's mind raced faster than the wind. If the boarders took the ship, they'd find the warrant signed by the port admiral. Nathaniel Quinn to hang at dawn for aiding a traitor. The admiral's signature was iron. The admiral's son, Lord Ashworth, was currently standing beside Nat with a cutlass in one hand and a burning fuse in the other. Plan! Nat yelled over the cannonade. Lucien's grin was feral. We sink our own ship before they can board. Nat stared. You're mad. Mad beats dead. They sprinted for the powder magazine, boots slipping on blood and sand. Below deck, the air was thick with sulfur and fear. Barrels of gunpowder towered like sleeping giants. Lucien jammed the hammock between 2 casks, wedging it tight. 40 seconds, he said, striking flint. Either we light the fuse or the Spaniards do. Nat's hand shook. And if we're still aboard? Lucien met his eyes. Then we meet St. Peter together. The fuse hissed, a tiny serpent of fire racing toward oblivion. Up on deck, the battle had turned. Resolute's colors dipped. The Spanish ensign climbed the mizzen. Boarding axes thudded into wood. Screams of triumph and terror braided into one sound. Nat and Lucien burst back into sunlight, smoke clawing at their lungs. The hammock, now a burning torch, flew across the deck and landed in the lap of the Spanish lieutenant. Lavender burst into flame, sweet and obscene. Chaos erupted. The lieutenant screamed, batting at fire. The fuse below deck reached the magazine. Silence. A single heartbeat where every man aboard felt the world inhale. Then the world exhaled. The explosion lifted Resolute's stern 6 feet into the air. Masts snapped like twigs. Cannonballs rolled like marbles. Nat and Lucien were thrown overboard, arms locked, the burning hammock trailing sparks into the night. Cold water slapped them awake. Salt filled their mouths. Timbers rained around them like deadly hail. Nat's head broke the surface. Lucien's hand still gripped his wrist. Behind them, Resolute listed, burning, a funeral pyre for 300 men. Ahead, the Spanish flagship loomed, lanterns blazing, nets already lowering to fish survivors from the sea. Among the lanterns, Nat spotted a familiar figure, Admiral Ashworth, Lucien's uncle, the man who'd signed Nat's death warrant. Lucien's teeth chattered. "We surrender, we hang." Nat's eyes fixed on the hammock, what was left of it, floating like a ghost on the waves. The royal seal had melted, but the canvas still bore the faint outline of a crown that had once promised salvation. Voiceover cut in, urgent, intimate. "They've got 5 minutes before the nets close. 5 minutes to choose. Swim for the open sea and drown free, or board the enemy and face the rope. Tell me, would you fight the tide or face the noose? Comment swim or board below. The next wave is coming, and it's got your name on it." The camera lingered on Nat's face. Blood, salt, determination. Then cut to black, leaving only the sound of distant thunder and the faint, impossible scent of lavender on the wind. The water was black glass breaking. Nat's boots hit the flagship's ladder with a clang that rang louder than cannon fire. Behind him, Resolute's funeral pyre lit the sky blood orange. Ahead, Admiral Ashworth's polished deck stretched like a courtroom floor. 2 Marines hauled Nat and Lucien aboard, chains clinking, salt water streaming from their hair. 5 minutes. That was how long the powder magazine's fuse had sputtered before the sea swallowed it. 5 minutes until the charges Lucien had hidden in the flagship's hold, wrapped in the last scrap of lavender-scented hammock, reached their own hungry flame. Admiral Ashworth descended the quarterdeck stairs 1 deliberate step at a time, boots ringing like a judge's gavel. His eyes were winter steel. Nathaniel Quinn, mutineer and accomplice to treason. Sentence: death at sunrise. Lucien lunged. Chains yanked him back. "Your quarrels with me, uncle. Let him walk." The Admiral's lip curled. Family does not negotiate with firebrands. Nat tasted iron where he'd bitten his tongue. Sunrise was an hour away, 60 heartbeats measured in sand. He scanned the deck. 30 Marines, 10 cannons, 1 gallows already being hammered together amidships. And beneath their feet, wrapped in singed lavender, enough powder to turn the flagship into a second sun. A midshipman ran up, breathless. "Sir, the magazine's timer, someone's reset it. 45 minutes to detonation." The Admiral's face paled. "Find the fuse. Cut it. Now." Lucien's whisper brushed Nat's ear like a prayer. "The fuse runs through the orlop, past the surgeon's stores. 1 spark and the whole fleet sees God." Nat's mind raced. If the Marines found the charge, they'd simply toss it overboard, along with Lucien's last proof of innocence. If the fuse burned true, 300 souls would die for 1 man's pride. Mercy or vengeance? Choose. Admiral Ashworth turned to Nat. "You want your neck? Tell me where the powder is hidden, and I'll grant you a quick drop instead of a slow burn." Nat's pulse hammered against the iron collar. He pictured Mother's lavender garden. The waybees hovered like tiny miracles. He pictured Lucien's hand passing him the last dry crust of bread in the brig. He pictured the noose. "Trade," Nat said, voice raw. "Lucien's pardon for the location." The Admiral laughed. "You're bargaining from the gallows, sailor." Nat lifted his bound wrists. "Then we all swing together." 30 minutes. Marines thundered below deck, lanterns swinging like drunken stars. Somewhere in the dark, the fuse hissed, soft, steady, patient. Lucien caught Nat's eye. "Plan B." Nat nodded toward the forecastle. A powder keg sat lashed to the rail, ready to signal the fleet at dawn. One spark there, and the flagship's magazine would seem a tragic accident. No proof, no pardon, just fire. Lucien's face went white. That's murder. Nat's voice was stone. That's justice. 20 minutes. A Marine shouted from the hatch. Found a trail of powder. Leads to the surgeon's table. The Admiral drew his pistol. Last chance, Quinn. Nat looked at Lucien. Lucien looked at the fuse. Both looked at the gallows. Voiceover cut through the drum of rain and fear. Would you light the fuse and let the innocent burn to save your own skin? Or would you confess and trust a tyrant's mercy? Comment fire or faith. The next 20 minutes decide who boards the boat and who boards the pyre. 10 minutes. The fuse hissed louder now, a serpent-tasting air. Nat's chains clanked as he stepped forward. I'll show you the powder, he said. But only if Lucien walks free first. The Admiral's pistol wavered. 9 minutes. Lucien mouthed. Don't. 8. Nat knelt, pressed his forehead to the deck. Swear it on your rank. 7. The Admiral's oath cracked like a whip. Free the boy. Hang the sailor. 6. Marines unlocked Lucien's chains. He stumbled, caught Nat's shoulder. I'm not leaving you. Nat shoved him toward the rail. Go. Live. 5. Lucien's fingers brushed the singed edge of the lavender hammock tucked inside Nat's shirt. One last scrap of canvas, soaked in gun oil and memory. 4. Nat straightened, turned toward the hatch. 3. The fuse's hiss rose to a scream. 2. Admiral Ashworth raised his pistol. 1. Nat stepped into the darkness. Freeze frame. The screen snapped to black, leaving only the echo of a single heartbeat and the faint, impossible scent of lavender drifting across gunpowder and salt. The fuse never reached the powder. A single heartbeat before the spark kissed death. A blade flashed in the dark. Lucien's dagger, once his mother's letter opener, sliced the cord in one clean stroke. The hissing serpent died with a whimper. Nat felt the silence slam into his ribs harder than any broadside. Admiral Ashworth's pistol trembled. Barrel still trained on Nat's chest. You planned this, he snarled. Treason within treason. Lucien stepped between them, raising a piece of scorched canvas, what remained of the lavender hammock. The royal seal had melted into the weave, leaving a perfect, unbroken crown imprinted in wax and ash. He held it up like a priest presenting relics. Your Majesty's seal, Lucien said, voice ringing across the stunned deck. Proof of pardon. Proof of conspiracy. Proof you signed a death warrant on the king's own messenger. The Admiral's face went the color of old parchment. Nat watched the pistol waver, then lower. Around them, Marines lowered muskets one by one. The smell of powder still clung to the air, but the scent of lavender, impossible, defiant, rose above it. Lucien turned to the crew. Men of the Resolute, what say you? Do we deliver this traitor to the king? Or do we deliver justice here and now? A roar answered him, half anger, half relief. Chains rattled as Nat's wrists were freed. The Admiral lunged. Nat moved first. One punch, learned in the rigging, perfected in the brig, sent the Admiral sprawling. Lucien caught the man's collar, shoved him against the rail. You hanged my father's name, he said. Now you'll hang for it. But Nat stepped between them again. No more rope, he said quietly. The sea takes its own. He nodded toward the longboat already lowered for the gallows detail, now repurposed. 2 Marines heaved the Admiral over the side, wrists bound in the very chains meant for Nat. The splash was soft, swallowed by the wake. Dawn broke like a promise kept. Gold light poured across the deck. Resolute, what remained of her, limped toward Portsmouth flying a new flag. The Earl of Wexford's crest, stitched hastily from the lavender hammock's surviving strip. Nat stood at the rail, salt wind drying blood on his back, watching the horizon. Lucien joined him, handing over a small mahogany box. Inside lay a silver compass and a folded parchment. Nat's formal pardon, now sealed in the king's own wax. Quartermaster's post is yours, Lucien said, and a share of the prize money. Enough to buy every hammock in the fleet. Nat's fingers brushed the compass needle, steady despite the roll of the waves. "I'll take the compass," he said. "The rest I earned already." Lucien laughed, clear, young, free. "Then take this too." He pressed a second scrap of canvas into Nat's palm. Coordinates inked in blood red. "The treasure my uncle buried. Enough to ransom a kingdom or build a new one." Nat looked at the coordinates, then at the crew cheering behind them. "Keep it secret or share it wide. Your call?" Lucien added. Voiceover rose, gentle as tide. "Would you spend that gold on yourself, or use it to free every pressed sailor still in chains? Comment, share, or keep." The channel's next story starts where this gold is buried. The camera pulled back, revealing Resolute sailing into sunrise, lavender strips snapping like a battle standard. Nat's voice echoed the opening hurricane scream, now transformed. "I saved the man who saved me, and together we saved the sea." Fade to black. White text glimmered. Next episode, the gold that started a war. Subscribe button pulsed like a heartbeat. Lavender scent lingered. Impossible, unforgettable.